So for the past couple of months, I've been using the Canon C100 Mark I, often known as the working class hero of cinema cameras. And the reason being is because it's all in one. It's all ready to go. With this particular camera, as soon as you get it, you're ready to rock and roll. You don't need to have external recorders. You don't have to worry about having a cage. You don't have to worry about upgrading your computer software and systems just to edit the footage. As soon as you get this camera, it's ready to rock and roll. So in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing this camera, the Canon C100 Mark I, and talking about how I've enjoyed using it over the past couple of months, how I use it for personal projects, how I use it for client projects, and how I think it holds up in today's market. So if you're someone who's looking to get into a cinema camera, maybe this is your first one, you want to dip your toe in the water, but you're not looking to break the bank, the Canon C100 Mark I might be the perfect option for you. Let's jump into it. So without further ado, let's hop into some of the pros and cons of this camera and why you might consider picking one up. So the first thing is that it's very simple and it's easy to use. This camera has been described as very video centric as it has a lot of buttons on the camera itself, making it easy to access certain features that you might want to get to very quickly without being buried in a bunch of menus. The second thing that I love about this camera is the amount of pro features that it has, okay? So let's begin with, first of all, the audio. You have the ability to record XLR quality audio into the camera by using the camera's top handle. So anybody who knows when you're trying to get professional quality audio, a lot of times if you're using something like a DSLR and you want to get that XLR quality, you have to use an external recorder. So what's nice about this is that you have the ability to have that XLR quality recording directly into the camera, meaning that you don't have to sync it up in post. Also, the top handle provides you the ability to have a mic, or if you have mics that need phantom power, it also provides that as well. The preamps are really good, and I feel like the quality of audio that you get out of this camera is really great. So another pro feature about this camera is that you have the ability to shoot and log. Now, it is limited. You only get one log profile, but at the same time, that gives you way more, flexibility than you would have on a DSLR. Most DSLRs have standard picture profiles. They don't all have log. It does depend on the model that you have, but at least with the older Canons, this is true. So the problem is when you don't have a log setting and you're just kind of going through the different picture profiles, a lot of times that's baked in, right? So when you go into post, you don't have a lot of options or a lot of flexibility to push and stretch those colors. So being able to shoot and log, having that flat picture profile, being able to bring it into post and color grade it in more ways than you could with a standard profile is another pro feature that you get out of this camera. Aside from that, you also have dual SD card slots, right? So you're able to do either relay recording or you're able to do dual recording. With the relay, you get longer record times, and with the dual recording, you have an instant backup. The codec on this is AVC HD. It's not a very large file size, so that gives you a lot of space, and that's good because that means you don't have to upgrade your storage or upgrade your computer. You can kind of get rocking and rolling with this thing. You don't have to get special SD cards. You can just kind of keep it bare bones, minimum, basic, and get rolling. Another feature about having a cinema camera is there is no runtime. There is no record limit. So if you're working with some of the older Canon DSLRs, you know that they have record limits, right? That 29-minute record limit. With this here, you have no record limits, right? You have no runtime, right? You also have a clean HDMI out, right? Which is nice because on a lot of older Canons, you don't have a clean HDMI out. Another nice pro feature about this is that you have something that's called automatic black balance. And what this does is it lets your camera know exactly what is black. So this gives you a better image. So if you have to go higher into your ISOs, it kind of cuts down on some of the grain and some of the noise that you might get because your camera knows exactly what black is. The next pro about this camera is that it has a 4K sensor. So no, the camera does not shoot in 4K. Unfortunately, it's limited. It's only 1080p. Although it does give you a sharper 1080p image than you would normally get out of a camera that only does 1080p, being that it's a 4K sensor and it downsamples it to a 1080p image. Now, it's not gonna be exactly the same as you would get out of a 4K camera. Yes, you can up-res it in your post-production. It's not gonna be exactly the same, but it's gonna do really great. And for most people, they're not even gonna know the difference. You gotta think about it. Most of us consume content on our phones or on small screens, right? So when you're doing something for social media or web, it's actually a really great option. The next pro about this camera is that, well, it has good dynamic range. Is it the best? No, but it does have good dynamic range, which is gonna allow you to get nice and beautiful images, which also get you closer to that cinematic or that filmic look. And even though the dynamic range might be a little bit limited, you have internal ND filters, which is huge. If you have a camera that has internal ND filters and you don't have to worry about screwing on filters, it's such a time saver. And once you have it, you really don't want to go back to it. Now, it only has 6 stops of ND, but in most cases, that's going to get you to where you need to go. The next pro about this camera would be the battery. The batteries last seemingly forever on this camera. Now, when I picked it up with the top handle, side handle, and 2 Canon batteries. I did get a third, party aftermarket battery, but these cameras, or these batteries, last forever. I mean, you can throw that in there and just know that you're gonna be good throughout the whole day. You can be good with just 1 battery. You're gonna get almost 3 hours of recording time. And this very last pro of this camera would be something that's more subjective. It looks impressive to clients. When you show up on a shoot and you're setting this camera up and you got it all rigged out and set up, people think that it's a really expensive camera, not knowing that it's an older camera and that, you could probably pick it up for a couple $100s. The thing about this camera is that it looks different than a DSLR, because a lot of people have DSLRs. So when they see you with the DSLR, they're like, oh, I have something like that. Now, they might not know that yours is a certain type of model that can do this and do that way more than their little consumer models can do. But it's a perception thing. When they see it, they think, oh, I got a camera that looks like that, They don't think as much of it, but when they see this camera, they're like, that's pretty impressive. That looks like an expensive camera. So with all that being said, let's jump into some of the cons about this camera. Number 1 is that the autofocus on it, basically trash. It's basically useless. Now, does it have autofocus? It does. And depending on the model you get, it might have the upgraded dual pixel autofocus. But for the most part, the autofocus is very center focused. So if your subject isn't in the center, and also if it isn't very contrasty from the rest of your image, it can be hard for this bad boy to autofocus. So if you're somebody who shoots on gimbals, you shoot a lot of autofocus, this probably isn't the best option. You're gonna have to adjust your shooting style if you wanna use this camera, but the autofocus on this camera is pretty useless. The next con is subjective, and that is that this camera can get heavy. When you have it all set up and you got your top handle, your side handle, depending on the type of lens that you have on it, if you got an external monitor on it, this camera can get pretty heavy. Now, if you're shooting handheld, this can be a good thing because it kind of steadies it out and it helps out with the micro jitters. But at the same time, if you're not having this bad boy on a tripod and you're just trying to hand hold it, it can get heavy, it can wear on you. So that's another con of this camera. Subjective, but a con nonetheless. Now, the caveat to this con would be that you can actually break this bad boy down, right? This camera comes with 3 recording buttons, 1 on the side handle, 1 on the top handle, and 1 on the body. So you could take off the side handle, you could take off the top handle, have a super small, well, not super small, but smaller form factor and still be able to record. Now, you can't get all the bells and whistles when you're recording this way, but you can shrink it down, possibly throw it on a gimbal and use it in that fashion. The next con would be it's not 4K. Now, this is debatable, right? 4K, 8K, 6K, whatever, right? This is all debatable. But nowadays, 4K is kind of standard. So it isn't 4K. It's a 4K sensor, but it's not 4K. So you're not going to get the same detail that you would recording in 4K. But at the same time, it's still good, but it's not 4K. So keep that in mind. Another con would be some of the frame rates, right? you're really limited in the frame rates. It goes up to about 60 frames per second. I think that's like 60 frames per second interlace, which is, you know, more geared towards broadcasting. So if you're somebody who's shooting, say, let's say sports, or you're shooting a lot of action where things are moving really fast and you want to be able to slow it down in post-processing, you're not really going to have the ability with this camera, right? Because it only goes up to 60. So you can't go up to something like 120 frames per second and slam it down in post and really get that nice, clean, smooth, slow motion for certain types of action shots or certain types of movement. So that's another thing, right? The frame rates are limited, but it's an older camera, so, you know, what can you do? And last but not least, the screen on the back, or the display screen, doesn't articulate all the way out, in the sense that you can flip it around and vlog with this camera. So if you want to vlog with this camera, you can do it. I'm actually shooting this video right now using the C100, but it's going to take a little bit of extra time, right? You're going to have to, you know, set up your focus. You're going to have something where you can kind of see yourself if you want to see yourself. You can't get that flip out all the way. So if you want to use it for vlogging or self-recording, it could be a little bit extra work. It can be an extra step. Also, that screen isn't touchscreen. Now, the joystick that comes with it is very easy, you know, to maneuver and get to the menu and the settings and all that other jazz. But if you're somebody who wants to use it mainly for, you know, vlogging or just kind of recording yourself, just know that there's going to be, you know, some extra steps and a little bit more of a process involved when you're trying to use it that way. But with all of that being said, all in all, I think it's actually a pretty great camera. Like I said, I've had it for a couple of months now. I was able to pick it up for about $700 US, and that came with a top handle, side handle, and 2 batteries. So that's a pretty good deal. The images that you get are beautiful. I think, you know, you can set it up in such a way, and although it's not, you know, the sharpest, the crispiest camera, it does give you a filmic look if you wanted to. If you know, really geared, you know, the composition and your shots, you can get that filmic look that, you know, a lot of, you know, creators are looking for. And it has a lot of flexibility. So you can take this on professional shoots. It's going to hold up. The quality, the standards, your clients, they're going to be happy because most of them don't know the difference. If they tell you that they want 4K, just up-res it in post and give them a 4K file, they're not going to know the difference, right? As long as you got a nice clean shot. So if you're thinking about picking up this camera and you're wondering, is it worth it in today's market nowadays, I would say at the right price, it is. You don't want to overpay for this camera. If you see somebody is selling it for like, say, $1,000, I think that's way too much to pay for it. At that point in time, you could probably get something else. But with this camera, it's great because it's basically all in one. You can get this camera and start shooting right away, right? It's self-contained. You don't need to go and get a V mount. You don't need to get external batteries. You don't need to get external recorders. Everything is right there. It's been known as the working class cinema camera, right? The working class hero, something along those lines. I've heard it referenced as before, but that's because it's all together. It's all ready to go. As soon as you get this camera, bada bing, bada boom, you can slap it all together and get out there and start recording and not worry about having battery power, right? Not having enough power or enough juice. Not worry about your file sizes being too large and having to hook up some type of external, you know, recorder, or worrying about have to put in a cage together so you can shoot with it. It's just ready to go. Out the box, bada bing, bada boom, you're off to the races. So hopefully you found this video useful and helpful, and if so, please give me a like and drop me a comment and let me know what kind of cinema cameras are you using these days. And until the next time, keep on doing what you're doing and keep on shooting. Peace.